Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be reading Tunnels by Roger Gordon and Brian Williams. And we'll just be reading chapter 1 today, which is called Breaking Ground. Chapter 1 Schlack. The pickaxe hit the wall of earth and, sparkling on an unseen shard of flint, sank deep into the clay, coming to a sudden halt with a dull thud. This could be it, Will. Dr. Burrows crawled forwards in the cramped tunnel, sweating and breathing heavily in the confined space. He began feverishly clawing at the dirt, his breath clouding in the damp air. Under the combined glare of the helmet lamps, each greedy handful revealed more of the old wooden planking beneath, exposing its tar-coated grain and splintery surface. Pass me the crowbar. Will rummaged in his satchel, found the stubby blue crowbar, and handed it to his father, whose gaze was fixed on an area of wood before him. Forcing the flat edge of the tool between two of the planks, Dr. Burrow grunted as he put all his weight behind it to gain some purchase. He then began levering from side to side. The planks creaked and moaned against their rusting fixings until, finally, they bellied out, breaking free with a resounding crack. Will recoiled slightly at a climbing breeze, bled from the ominous gap Dr. Burrows had created. Urgently they pulled two of the planks out of place, leaving a shoulder-width hole, and paused for a moment in silence. Father and son turned and looked at each other, sharing a brief conspiratorial smile. Their faces, illuminated in each other's light beams, were smeared with the war paint of dirt. They turned back to the hole and stared in wonder at the dust motes floating like tiny diamonds, forming and reforming unknown constellations against the night-black opening. Dr. Burrows rarely leaned into the hole. Will squeezed in beside him to peer over his shoulder. As their helmet lamps cut into the abyss, a curved, tilted wall came into sharp focus. Their beams, penetrating deeper, swept over old posters whose edges were peeling away from the wall and waving slowly, like tendrils of seaweed caught in the drift of powerful currents at the bottom of the ocean. Will raised his head a little, scanning even further along until he caught the edge of an enameled sign. Dr. Burrows followed his son's gaze until the beam of their lamps joined together to clearly show the name. Highfield and Crossley North. This is it, Will. This is it. We found it. Dr. Burrow's excited voice echoed about the dank confines of the disused train station. They felt a slight breeze on their faces as something blew along the platform and down on the rails, as if sent into animated panic by this rude intrusion, after so many years into its sealed and forgotten catacomb. Will kicked wildly at the timbers at the base of the opening, throwing up a spray of splinters and hunks of rotting wood, until suddenly the ground below him slid away and spilled into the cavern. He scrambled through the opening, grabbing his spade as he went. His father was immediately behind him as they crunched a few spaces on the solid surface of the platform, their footsteps echoing and the helmet lamps cutting swaths into the surrounding gloom. Cobwebs hung in skeins from the roof, and Dr. Burrows blew as one draped itself across his face. As he looked around, his light caught his son, a strange sight with a shock of white hair sticking out like bleached straw from under his battle-scarred miner's helmet, his blue pale eyes flashing with enthusiasm as he blinked into the dark. It was difficult to describe Will's clothes, other than to say that they appeared to be at the same red-brown hue and texture as the clay he had been working in. Such was the passing, it covered him right up to his neck, making him appear like an artist's sculpture which had been miraculously infused with life. As for Dr. Burrows himself, he was a weary man of average height. One wouldn't have described him as tall, or for that matter short, just somewhere in the middle. He had a round face with piercing brown eyes that appeared all the more intense due to his gold-tipped pebble glasses. "Look up there, Will, look at that," he said as his light picked out a sign above the gap through which they had just emerged. "Way out," it read in large black letters. They turned on their hand-held torches, and the beams combined with those of their weaker helmet lamps, ricocheting through the darkness to reveal the full length of the platform. Roots hung from the roof, and the walls were caked with effervescence and streaked with chalky limescales where fissures had escaped seamed moisture. They could hear the sound of running water somewhere in the distance. "How's this for a find?" Dr. Burrows said with a self-congratulatory air. "Just think, nobody has set foot down here since the new Highfield line was built in 1895. They had emerged onto one end of the platform, and Dr. Burrows now shone his torch into the opening of the train tunnel to their side. It was blocked by a mound of rubber and earth. It'll be just the same down the other end. They would have sealed both tunnels, he said. As they picked their way along the platform, gazing at the walls, it was just possible to make out blocks of crazily cracked green tiles with dark green edging. Gas lamps sprouted every 3 meters or so, a number with glass shades still on them. Dad, over here, Will called. Have you ever seen these posters? Can you still read them? I think they're adverts from a land or something. And here's a good one. Wilkinson Circus, to be held on the common 10th day of February 1895. There's a picture, he said breathlessly as his father joined him. The poster had been spared any water damage, and they could make out the crude colors of the red big top, with the blue man in a top hat standing in front of it. And look at this, Will said. Too fat? Dr. Gordon's elegant pills. The heavy line drawing depicted a portly man with a beard, holding up a small container. They walked further along, stepping around a mountain of rubble that spilled onto the platform from an archway. That would have led through the other platform, Dr. Burrows told his son. They paused to look at the ornate cast iron bench. This will go nicely in the garden. All it needs is a whip down and a few coats of gloss. Dr. Burrows was muttering as Will's torch beam alighted on a dark wooden door hidden in the shadows. Dad, wasn't there an office or something on your plan? Will asked, staring at the door. An office, Dr. Burrows replied, fumbling through his pockets until he found the piece of paper he was searching for. Let me have a look. Will didn't wait for an answer, pushing at the door which was stuck fast. Quickly losing interest in his plan, Dr. Burrows went to the aid of his son and together they tried to shoulder the door open. It was badly warped in the frame, but on the third attempt and settling gave and they tumbled into the room, a downpour of silt covering their heads and shoulders. Coughing and rubbing dust from the eyes, they pushed their way through a shroud of cobwebs. Wow! Will exclaimed quietly. There in the middle of the small office, they could make out a desk and a chair, furred with dust. Will moved cautiously behind the chair and, with his gloved hand, brushed away the layer of cobwebs on the wall to reveal a large, faded map of the railway system. Could have been the station master's office, Dr. Barrow said as he swept dust off the top of the desk, with his arm to reveal a blotter upon which rested a grimy teacup and saucer. Next to them, a small object, discolored with age, leaked green onto the surface of the desk. How fascinating! A railway telegraph exquisitely made. Brass, I would say. Two of the walls were lined with shelves stacked with decaying cardboard boxes. Will selected a box at random and carried it over the desk quickly, as it threatened to fall apart in his hands. He lifted off the misshapen lid and looked in the wonder at the bundles of old tickets. He picked one of them out, but the perished rubble band crumbled, sending a confetti of tickets spewing over the desktop. They're blanks. They won't have been printed up, Dr. Barrow said. You're right, Will confirmed, never ceasing to be amazed at his father's knowledge as he studied one of the tickets. But Dr. Barrows wasn't listening. He was kneeling down and tugging at a heavy object on the lower shelf, wrapped in a rotten cloth that dissolved at his touch. And here, Dr. Burrows announced as Will turned to look at the machine, which resembled an old typewriter with a large pull handle on its side, is an example of an early ticket printing machine. Bit corroded, but we could probably get the worst stuff. What, for the museum? No, for my collection, Dr. Burrows replied. He hesitated, and his face took on a serious expression. Look, Will, we're not going to breathe a word about any of this to anyone. Understand? Huh? Will spun around, a slight frown creasing his brow. It wasn't as if either of them went around broadcasting the fact that they embarked on these elaborate underground workings in their spare time. Not that any would be seriously interested, anyways. Their common passion for the buried and the as yet undiscovered was something they didn't share with anyone else, something that brought father and son together, a bond between them. They stood in the office, their miner's lamp lingering on each other's faces. As his son hadn't made any sort of response, Dr. Burrows fixed him with a stare and went on. I don't have to remind you what happened last year with the Roman villa, do I? The big wig professor turned up, hijacked the date, and grabbed all the glory. I discovered that site, and what did I get? A tiny acknowledgement buried in his pathetic effort of a paper. Yeah, I remember, Will said, recalling his father's frustration. An outburst of fury at the time. Want that to happen again? No, of course not. Well, I'm not going to be a footnote on this one. I'd rather nobody knew about it, and they're not going to nick this from me, not this time. Agreed? Will nodded in assent, sending his light bouncing up and down the wall. Dr. Burrows glanced at his watch. We really ought to be getting back, you know. All right, Will replied grudgingly. His father caught his tone. There's no real hurry, is there? We can take our time to explore the rest tomorrow or night. No, I suppose, Will said half-heartedly, moving towards the door. Dr. Burrows patted his son affectionately on his hard hat as they were leaving the office. Sterling work, Will, I must say. All those months of digging really paid off, didn't they? They retraced their steps to the opening and after a last look at the platform, clambered back into the tunnel. 6 meters or so in, the tunnel blossomed out so they could walk side by side. If Dr. Burrows stooped slightly, it was just high enough for him to stand. We need to double up on the braces and props, Dr. Burrows announced, examining the expanse of timbers above their heads. Instead of one every meter as we discussed, they're about 1 and 2. Sure, no problem, Dad, Will assured him rather unconvincingly. And we need to shift this lot out, Dr. Burrows continued, nudging a mound of clay on the tunnel floor with his boot. Don't want to get too constricting down here, do we? Nope, Will replied vaguely, not really intending to do nothing about it at all. The sheer thrill of discovery resulted all too often in him flouting the safety guidelines his father tried to lay down. His passion was to dig, and the last thing on his mind was to waste time on housekeeping, as Dr. Burrows called it. And, in any case, his father rarely volunteered to help with any of the digging itself, only making an appearance when one of his hunches paid off. Dr. Burrows whistled abstractly through his teeth as he slowed to inspect a tower of neatly stacked buckets and a heap of planking. As they continued on the way, the tunnel climbed, and he stopped several more times to test the wooden props on either side. He smacked them with the palm of his hand, his obscure whistling rising to an impossible squeak as he did so. The passage eventually leveled out and widened into a larger chamber, where there was a trestle table and a pair of sorry-looking armchairs. They dumped some of their equipment on the table, then climbed the last stretch of tunnel to the entrance. Just as the town clock finished striking 7, a length of corrugated iron sheeting lifted a couple of centimeters in a corner of the Terrapin Square car park. It was early autumn, and the sun was just tipping over the horizon as father and son, satisfied the coast was clear, pushed the sheeting back to reveal the large timber-framed hole in the ground. They poked their heads a little way out, double-checking that there was nobody else in the car park, then clambered from the hole. Once the sheeting was back in place over the entrance, Will kicked dirt over it to disguise it. A breeze rattled the hoardings around the car park, and a newspaper rolled along the ground like tumbleweed, scattering its pages as it gained momentum. As the dying sun silhouetted the surrounding warehouses and reflected off the birchy tile facade of a nearby Peabody Estate tenant block, the two barrels ambling out of the car park looked every inch a pair of prospectors, leaving their claim in the foothills to return to town. And that is it, guys, for Chapter 1 of Breaking Ground. If you want, go ahead and answer the following questions. Why do you think Dr. Burrows and Will were in the tunnel? What were they looking for? Go ahead and comment them down below, and we'll see each other next time. Bye!